great to be with you today on Stronger Conference. And just for a few minutes, I want to explore the question of whether you've ever felt stuck in your personal or your professional life. I don't know whether you found yourself sitting at work or sitting at home and thinking, oh, I am stuck. I am stuck in this job, or I am stuck in a set of situations in my personal life that I'm not kind of really okay with. Or perhaps you're in leadership in your organization, or perhaps you're an entrepreneur. You work for yourself. You got some people working for you, and you got launched a few years ago, and it was all going great. But you're now past that initial startup phase, and suddenly kind of feeling like we are at risk of getting stuck in some ways. Perhaps at a more personal level, you think to yourself, actually, I'm busy, my life's good, everything's going fine, but I don't really have that many friends. I don't have a community of people around me whose company I really enjoy. Or maybe even you're single and you think, actually, I'd love the chance to meet someone this year, or I want to deal with practical things like my health or my finances, all sorts of things. You see, I think very few of us go through life without feeling stuck at some point or other. It can be at different seasons, maybe when we're young and starting out, or maybe we've been going a while and 20 years or so in work, and we think, oh gosh, I'm not quite sure what the next 20 years are going to be like. And it's okay. It's probably okay to feel stuck for a short period of time. But if that goes on for a longer period, if days and weeks turn into months or even years, and a sense of stagnation settles in your personal life or in your workplace, it can be really difficult to work out what to do next. So I want to think with you for a few moments about how we can acknowledge those times and those places in our lives where we might get a bit stuck, but what we can do to kind of move on from there so that we can avoid, where possible, a sense of kind of long-term, medium to long-term stagnation that might settle in. I was really fortunate last year to be able to take a sabbatical. I'm a vicar in a church on the south coast of England, and churches and universities are really two of the few organizations these days that still encourage people to take a sabbatical. So I was able to step back from the day-to-day of church life for a few months and take some time to review and reset a little bit. And I did that for a couple of reasons. Personally, it was because I had to acknowledge that the last few years, particularly since the pandemic, have been incredibly attritional for me personally, that I'd spent probably 18 months or so on the edge of professional and personal burnout. Now, many of us will experience that in our lives. For me, it was like the engine was revving too high, constantly revving too high, and there wasn't much I could do about it. I was living with quite a heightened sense of anxiety and concern, stuck in fight or flight mode for an extended period of time that was beginning to have quite detrimental effect on my own well-being. I wasn't necessarily stuck at work, but the sense of stuckness was in a place that I knew I needed to get out of. And so the sabbatical was an opportunity to take a step back and say, what's happening here? What might I do about it? But it was also the opportunity to reflect on the fact that the organization I work for a local church. That local church is part of the Church of England. So that's kind of my organization, if you like. To be honest, the organization I work for is profoundly stuck. And has been stuck, and not just stagnating, but has been stuck and declining for decades. There's loads of good news in the church in the UK. If you're part of a church community, a faith community of some kind, I bet that because you're the kind of person that listens to conferences like this, probably there's loads of great news going on in your church or your faith community. Certainly in the Church of England at large, there's loads of fantastic things happening. Part of what I did last year was spend some time traveling around the country, seeing some fantastic news stories in some really unexpected places. But at a national level, the good news is not yet outweighing the bad. At a national level, the graph is still going down. We are stuck in quite a profound way. I've got a friend that's thinking about a new project in a town in the north of England, which has got catastrophically low church attendance, certainly as far as the Church of England is concerned. And he and some folks have been putting together a new project, and they're really excited about it. And they got to the day where they were going to go and visit the church, the site that they thought was the best place for a new project to revitalize the church in that town. They went to visit the site, they had a look around, they went to visit a rep there, but it was absolutely clear this rep wanted kind of nothing to do with it. They were not interested in this project at all. They don't have a vicar, they don't have a pastor, they've got a very small, declining, aging congregation, not a lot of future, but even so, the idea of this big new project coming in was not something that this rep was interested in. As the day went along, my friend's spouse got quite frustrated about how it was going, and eventually they got into the afternoon, and in a burst of frustration, they said, well, what do you want to do to this rep? What's your plan? What's your vision? You're stuck. And what do you want to do about it? Or is it simply that you hope that the last person that leaves the building will just turn the light off on the way out? So eventually something around all of that kind of sunk in. The day came to an end, and my friend went home, and he found in his inbox the next day an email from this rep saying, you know, it was a really great day. I'm so pleased that you came along to visit. I think this project is exactly what our town needs, and I think it's a brilliant idea. May I suggest 2 other churches that you might want to use as the base? Yes, you can do it, but please not in my church. Thank you very much. And that's just an illustration of kind of that sense of stuck that certainly we can get into in institutions and organizations, where change and new things become kind of anxiety making for us, and not something that we find really, really difficult to get on board with. So what might we do if we acknowledge a sense of stuckness in our personal lives or in our professional lives, either in our own workplace experience or perhaps in the organizations or departments that we lead? Is there anything we can do to acknowledge that? And what might we do to kind of start to get unstuck so that we don't find ourselves getting into months or even years of kind of stagnation? What might we be able to do about that? I want to suggest a posture and a practice. A posture and a practice. Then I've got a couple of books to recommend that you might want to read, and then we're done. So let me suggest a posture that we can take towards our circumstances, towards our situation, and then a practice, something practical that we can do. Very often, when we're feeling a bit stuck, particularly of the activist type, we want to leap straight into action. We want to leap straight into doing something about it. And that can be absolutely fine. But if we don't perhaps take some time to reflect on what's going on, where we are, what we are here for, then that action may help, or it may only embed some of the problems. That's why I think it's really important to attend to our mental and our emotional, our psychological posture before we jump into action. And the posture I want us to take is really simple. That if you're feeling stuck, you're feeling you're at risk of stagnation in your professional and your personal life, the first thing you need to do is take some time to renew your sense of core purpose. To renew your core sense of purpose. As a minister, as a vicar, I might say actually to renew your God-given sense of purpose. What are you here for? We might listen to Ken Costa or Simon Sinek. In moments like this, they would remind us that we need to know your why. What's your why? Not just your what and your how and your where and your when, but what's your why? What are you here for? What is your core God-given sense of purpose? For me last year, it took me probably the best part of 2 months away from the day-to-day of work to kind of come back to myself a little bit and remember that my core sense of purpose is to be a beloved child of a Heavenly Father who knows the love and grace of God for myself, and then can work with my Heavenly Father in the work that He's given me to do, which specifically for me is around church leadership, renewal, mission, ministry, all that stuff that you think church leaders do. That's what I do. But I had to remind myself that my core sense of purpose was to be a beloved child of a heavenly Father, who was living a healthy human life in the love and grace of God, to be able to be a decent spouse, a husband, a father, not just and someone in work that could function well, not just busy and active, doing more, but doing it from a place of remembering what my core purpose is. My core purpose is to be a beloved child of a heavenly Father who is working with him in the world as a kind of trying to be, as best I can, a functional human being, working with him to make my little corner of the world a better place, a little bit more like heaven. What's your core purpose? What would be your core purpose personally? How would you describe the core purpose of your organization? If you had to write it down in a couple of sentences, I hope that if you were a person of faith, that something about being a beloved child of a heavenly Father would be fundamental to who you are. And the amazing thing about that is it doesn't depend on our circumstances, doesn't depend on our relationship status, doesn't depend on how well things are going. You begin to remind yourself that at core, you are a beloved child of a heavenly Father. What about your organization? If you're experiencing a bit of kind of stuckness at work, what's your core activity? Very often, one of the problems is not that we're doing too little, actually that we're doing too much. We're trying to cover so many bases. We're trying to be everything to everybody that we forget sometimes what our core activity in our work or our organization might be. For me, for the organization I served, the Church of England, for a long time, our core business was kind of just keeping the spiritual life of the nation ticking over, helping our nation stay broadly Christian. But we're a secular country now, even if we still have that constitutional framework of Christianity in the background. Functionally, we're a secular society. So our core business, we have to remind ourselves that actually, whatever we thought our core business might have been for a couple of hundred years, actually the core business of the church in every nation, in every age, has always been to share the love of God in Jesus Christ with people that don't know it. That's our core business. So, but that's difficult. As I told you, is illustrated from that story before. Renewing that core sense of purpose is really difficult because we've been doing something else for hundreds of years, just trying to keep things ticking over. Well, what if you can't just keep things ticking over? What does it mean to kind of come back to the fundamental, the basic, the core purpose that we are here for? Now, if you're in business, if you're in work, I'm a vicar, so you'll expect me to say something like making money is always going to be difficult for a core purpose. Being successful, getting more reach online, those are great things. Those are tools that you can use to serve your core purpose, but they can never be your core purpose. As maybe you've heard Ken Costa say this, he says it really well. He says, money is a great servant, but a poor master. Making money is you will probably make money if you work out what your core purpose is and do it really, really well. But making money, being successful, even greater reach online, those are good things to help you achieve core purposes. But once things like that become your core purpose, then of course, other things are going to come into your professional life that maybe aren't quite what you want. So it's really important to have a clear sense of core purpose that is about, I would, as a person of faith, I would always want you to ask, how do we work with God to make this world a better place? So that's the first thing. The posture is this. How do you renew your core sense of purpose? How do you renew your God-given purpose? You say, okay, Richard, that's great. I can do that. I can go and I can do that in an hour in a coffee shop. Fine. What do I do next? Well, if you're feeling stuck, if you're worried that in your personal and professional life that you are stuck and at risk of stagnation, what can you do about that? What practical thing you can do about that? This is really, really simple. Simply put, you need to try some new things. You need to try new things. But I want to suggest a really simple principle for trying new things that was one of the most helpful things I read about in my sabbatical. That's actually something I put into practice in my work and my ministry over the years, and that we will be putting into practice in our local context over the next couple of years. And the principle is simply this. When you're thinking about trying new things, fire bullets, then cannonballs. This is a phrase from a book by Jim Collins and Morton Hansen, which I'll show you in a minute, which is called Great by Choice. And the book is about helping organizations and individuals manage uncertainty, chaos, and luck. Good luck, bad luck, all the kinds of it. And one of the principles they saw in organizations that have resilience built in is that they don't necessarily take big swings straight away. We tend to think, particularly if we're activist types, that the response to feeling a bit stuck or a bit stagnant is to take a big swing, to invest loads of money and time and resources into one thing. On the basis that if we kind of really fire a cannonball at it, surely we'll hit, won't we? If we put enough resources and effort into it. And sometimes you will hit. And maybe your entire business is built on one big swing that hit. And now you've got a fantastic, thriving, successful business. But the problem is sometimes you may hit. And if you hit, you then might start to believe that it was something that you're special. There was something about you that you know better than the market, you know better than people around you. And so next time comes along, you do the same thing. Big swing, big hit. But if you don't hit, then you actually jeopardize the future of your organization. Same thing can happen in our personal lives as well. Let's say you think, actually, I want to meet someone this year. I want to make some new friends this year. So sometimes that can come out of a place where we're feeling a bit stuck and we think, all right, I'm going to gather up the resources to try one big thing. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. This is going to be it. This is going to be the thing that helps me meet someone special or make some new friends or something like that. Kind of get some aspect of my life unstuck. And we make a big swing. And if it hits, great. But if it doesn't, we feel like we've expended so much financial, emotional, psychological resources that actually we find ourselves in a worse place than we were when we started. So I want to offer this principle to you. Fire bullets, then cannonballs. Don't just make one big swing. Try 4, 5, 6, 7, even more smaller things. Commit limited, targeted resources to things. Have a go at a range of things. Then when you see what hits, then invest in that. Fire lots of bullets. Then when something hits, then fire a cannonball at it. What Jim Collins and Morton Hansen found was that successful organizations had a lot of things going on. And it always looked like they were striking lucky, but they were striking lucky not because they made one big swing that just happened to be a big hit, was because they were always running lots of little things, investing in lots of little things. Then when they found of something that hit, then they would put lots of resources into it. Conversely, organizations that would go for big swings, sometimes they'd get a hit and they'd blow up, become a multi-million-pound organization overnight. But you know what? If the next time they did the same thing, that was a miss, they could crater their organization within an incredibly short period of time, because actually it was a swing and maybe a hit, but maybe a miss, because they fired cannonballs at things. But the successful, resilient organizations actually had a lot of smaller things on the go at once. Then when one hit, they would be able to put larger resources into it. What about you in your personal life? And then I'm going to finish off thinking about my organization. You in your personal life, you think to yourself, actually, I need to make some new friends this year. Maybe we summon up the energy for one big hit. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you may actually feel worse off. But actually say, I want to try 6 things this year, but only put limited resources into each one of them. So that if it's a miss, do you know what? I had a great time. I spent 30 quid, came home at the end of the evening, never going to do it again. But do you know what? I've not so mortgaged myself financially or emotionally that actually I can't try again. Actually, I try 6 things this year. Maybe you want to get fit. Maybe you want to kind of think about your own well-being. Try 6 things, but don't commit so much into them that at the end of it, you've got nothing left and you feel like you've strung yourself out. If the first 6 things don't work, try another 6 things. Try new things, but then try firing bullets rather than cannonballs. For us as an organization, we've been involved in organizational renewal for the past 7 years. So we're going to try 1 or 2 new things a year for the next 4 or 5 years. Just see what hits. Commit some resources into each one of them. But then if something really works, that will be one of the things that we keep for the long term. So maybe you need to do something like that in your organization, your professional world too. Try some new things. Let me finish with a couple of book recommendations. to take with you. These are two books by Jim Collins, part of his work on leadership series. If you want to understand organizational stagnation and failure, if you want to understand the Church of England, you can read this book called How the Mighty Fall. If you're interested in how organizations remain resilient through uncertainty, chaos, and good luck and bad luck, this book great by choice, which is where you get that idea of fire bullets than cannonballs. Maybe you're feeling a bit stuck. Maybe you don't want that stuckness to turn into stagnation. What can you do about that? Take a new posture, renew your core sense of purpose, and then from that, try new things. But do you know what? Try a range of new things. Fire bullets, then cannonballs. Thanks so much for your time today. It's always great to be part of Stronger Conference. God bless you as you begin 2024.